Today we will go on to ST 45.4 Chula Purnama Sutta. The lesser discourse on the full moon. Purnama or Purnama in Sanskrit is full moon. This word also has come into the local Malay language, Purnama, meaning full moon. M110. So this is a Majjhima Sutta. Majjhima Sutta, as you know, they are very often well-structured, instructive suttas. And the theme is the false person and the true individual. So this is a very useful sutta to guide us in the practice of Buddhism, especially in terms of personal psychology, if you like. Of course, when we talk about personal psychology, we also need to talk about interaction with others. So there's always a connection with social psychology. Here the distinction or the comparisons between the false person, true individual. And notice the word individual is used because the true individual is someone who has a kind of very integrated, very focused kind of mind and personality. Now there's a special word for false persons, ka, purisa, and the true individual, you have this very well-known word, sappurisa. Ka is opposite of sad or sadhu, or meaning good. Sappurisa you can like expand into something like sadhu, purisa, a good person, or a true individual. The word individual is also used in the description of the saints. They are called true individuals, Purisa Puggala, for example. But Sappurisa is a broader term than say the word saint, for example. Although in the sutta you find Sappurisa referring to the saints, the srimanas, and so on, Sappurisa can also refer to a good person, any one of us, if we keep the precepts well, we practice meditation, and we cultivate wisdom. So remember, as Buddhists, we have the threefold duties. No? So we have numbers here: the 3 refuges, the 5 precepts, and you have the 3 training. The first training is moral culture, or moral virtues, right? Now, when we talk about moral culture, moral virtues, moral conduct, sila, only this morning I was writing a reflection about using digital technology to learn Dharma, to teach Dharma. Because in the future, I was actually reflecting right now first, because I was just thinking, almost every day I'm teaching some students in different parts of the world. Some of them respond at the same time, real time is wait. Some delayed time because of the world clock, we are in different parts of the world. It's very interesting how things happen. And I was saying it's amazing how these people can benefit. Although many of them never met me in person, and yet they are learning the suttas, and they're very happy learning the suttas. Their lives are changing. So I have this question, I ask myself, does this really work? Can it really benefit? But the way we look at them, the way they respond so far, you can say it's just like they are coming to class like this. That's because we follow certain rules on that Facebook. We are very strict about being present to the Dharma. In other words, when you are there, I keep reminding the people, this is my total house, my digital house. So when you come to someone's house, you behave in a certain polite way. The host will be polite to you, you're polite to the host. You don't go to the house and scold people or say things which are unbecoming, you know. So there is that kind of decorum. So if we observe that kind of decorum, then it will work. So I told myself, Sila is very important here in the digital learning on Facebook. So we must have what is called cyber morality. If you don't have this, then you face the same fate as early psychology, early modern psychology. Because right now, we don't really have any kind of cyber morality. I think people should start talking about it, insisting on it. That if you are on Facebook, these are the rules you follow. Then I thought of the Pali word, because how do you translate cyber morality into Pali? They don't have, technically, there's no such word in the sutras, you know. The closest Pali word to cyber would be Sankhya, Sankha or Sankhya. So I coined the word Sankhya Sila, cyber morality. This is called a neologism. In other words, it's a new word, so we put a star in front of it. In other words, you won't find it in any dictionary. It's a new term which is defined this morning. Okay? It's very simple. Actually, it's a practice that's going on. You know, we respect each other on Facebook. We talk Dharma. Of course, occasionally you can have some humorous statements, other things related to the Dharma. And if you maintain this kind of moral conduct, then you get the effect of the Dharma teaching. So in that way, it is possible to have the first Dharma training online. Alright, so that is first Buddhist training, Sila. But we have a problem with number 2, that is Samadhi, meditation. It's not easy. Actually, don't say it's impossible, actually. I mean, you can't be meditating on Facebook, you know. But holographically, it's possible. So when you have holographic technology, maybe there come a day when by pressing some buttons or some kind of arrangement, I can appear in your room in Valdivia, in South America, or in Canada or Alaska, and I'll be sitting in front of you, talking to you. I'll be all over the world, so to speak. Then you can meditate. All you need is a photographic image, because the person has to be there, actually doing it, and you feel the presence. So this is the presence of the person, the cyber presence. Then it's possible to practice meditation also. This is a bit of futuristic Buddhism. There are lots of danger here, but these are the good parts. Then comes a third one, training in wisdom. That one you have to do yourself. You have to do your research, you have to put together what you have learned, you have to synthesize, you have to analyze and then synthesize, okay? These are the 2 approaches to Buddhist studies. Analytical approach, synthetic approach. Analyze means you break them up into pieces, you know, look at the parts. Synthesize means you put the parts together again and see how they work. So those are the 3 trainings. So if you can do this, then you'll be called a true individual. Okay, in the sense of the sutta here, as you will see. So let's look at the translation, starting on page 42. Is the paging correct with yours? Yeah. Now, again, this sutta follows a very formal structure. You have 2 parts, they're very easy here. The first part, I have not put the centralized header, but you can see the first subheader, the false person. Okay, so that's the first part. And then the second part, you can see the true individual on page 44. All right, maybe I should centralize this. So this is what is called a contrapuntal approach. I don't know if I pronounce contrapuntal or contrapuntal counterpoint. Point, counterpoint. Right? So, or thesis, antithesis. So here the Buddha first begins with the negative teachings, and then is the positive teachings. Let's look at the sutta itself. The Lesser Discourse on the Full Moon, M110. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the mansion of Megara's mother in the eastern park outside Savatthi. Right, so this building was built by the Lady Visakha. At that time, the Blessed One was sitting surrounded by the Sangha, the community of monks. Here, of course, there are also probably nuns present. I think the word monastic is better than just monks. There could be nuns present. In the open, in the full moon night, on an observance day, the 15th, this is the holiest, brightest, happiest day of the month. All right? In fact, in the monasteries, I remember whenever the full moon comes, the new moon comes, these 2 days, there's a sense of radiance in all the monks and novices, of course. Because number one, there is no class, it's a holiday. It's really a holy day, and also a holiday. Of course, you have to go to the monastery early, and there's a big gathering there, a lot of people come, and a lot of food, a lot of alms food, the bowls will be more than usual, okay? The thing is, it's not that we don't really get excited when the bowl is full, because you can't finish everything there. One bowl can actually serve like 6 months, I mean, a thin monk. Yeah, it's quite a big bowl, okay? So you don't need that much food, in other words, unless they give you bulky stuff. Anyway, so imagine in India 2,500 years ago, no night lightings, no electricity, it's always natural lights, candles, oil lamps, So night is night, it's dark. But when it is the full moon, it's really bright. And the whole night landscape is almost like day. But it is a different kind of day. It's got a certain peacefulness to it, a certain coolness to it. And the teachers, the religious teachers are famous for teaching on such a day. So the Buddha spoke to the monks on that day. And although it's only mentioned monks here, we must imagine the monks are sitting, although it says surrounded by the monks, actually they're kind of like, more like a U-shape, kind of. Technically speaking, the monks will be on one side, and then the nuns will be on one side, and then the lay women will be behind the nuns, and laymen will be behind the monks, So that's roughly the arrangement, okay? Because when the Buddha speaks, he'll be speaking to the crowd, so they wouldn't be sitting behind him unless there's no space. So that's the scenario. Then the Buddha surveyed the community of monks, all sitting in silence. So this is what he does. It's like he's saying, okay, what shall I teach this? So he just have a quick survey on everyone present, and then he teaches them, he tells them the thesis, the key idea. So the teaching starts here, section 3. We choose. Would a false person know another person thus? Another false person thus? This worthy one is a false person. So this is a teaching that starts with a question. There is one work called Petakopadesa, which is a kind of a prototype, early volume. Then there's a revised version of it, which is called the Netipakarana, translated as the guide. So it's a commentary work. So this, the author of this book, he studies all the different styles of sutta. So say, okay, this is a sutta which starts with questions and then it tells you what's about. So all the different kinds of suttas, he analyzes them. This is a very interesting thing to do. So this is a sutta that starts with a question. So the question is, would a false person know another false person? Then the monks replied, not at all, Bhante. So there are certain things that nuns already know, so to speak. And in a sense, that is also reinforcing the teaching, because when the monks say not so, the novices will be listening, so they learn in that way, indirect learning in this case. Then the Buddha, the Buddha has kind of stopped taking here, so he wants to know, are the audience with him? Right? So okay, the audience understand this level, now we go to the next level. So the Buddha says, good. Good, that means, okay, now you're ready, I'm going to tell you more things. Good bhikshus, it is impossible, bhikshus, that there's no way that a false person would know another false person's thus. This worthy one is a false person. What does this mean? In other words, a bad guy will never see another bad guy as a bad guy. He will say, it's a good guy, you're my friend. He doesn't even know he's a bad guy. So this is the sad thing about being bad. You don't know you are bad. Right? Just like Angulimala, he was going around killing. He thought he was fulfilling his duty to his teacher. So he is being forced into that immoral life. Until the Buddha comes along and says, get out of this rut. Then he realizes he's in the wrong. Okay? So this is one way of understanding this statement. The false person will not know another false person. Why? Because he doesn't even know himself. But, continues the Buddha, but bhikshus, would a false person know a true individual? Thus, this worthy one is a true individual. Again, the monks reply, not at all, Bhante. So then the Buddha said, very true, okay, very good. So you are following me. So here again, if the false person does not know another one who is false, he doesn't even know that a person is good if he meets that person. On the other hand, to complicate matters, he might think that the good person is bad actually, right? So that's it, that kind of complicates matters even more. So this is the minor and negative of the false person. Then the Buddha kind of defines who this false person is, the qualities of a false person. Section 4. A false person, bhikshus, is endowed with a false nature. Number 2 is devoted to false persons. Number 3, thinks as a false person. Number 4, counsels as a false person. 5, speaks as a false person. 6, acts as a false person. 7, holds the views of a false person. And number 8, gives as a false person. So these are the 8 qualities of a false person. And the Buddha goes into details of each of these. Let us just go through them as a basis for our next section. 5, which gives the first quality. And how bhikshus is a false person endowed with a false nature? Here bhikshus, a false person, lacks faith, has no moral shame, no moral fear, has heard or learned little, is lazy, confused, lacking wisdom. So this is a kind of gentle warning telling us don't get caught up with this kind of situation. Notice the very first quality, no faith. If you have no faith, then things won't work. So faith is a very important quality, especially in training. Faith simply means I can do it, or this will work. Right? It's not just merely saying I believe, but there's an active part of it. In other words, you're willing to try this. So you have faith in that sense. It's not just saying, okay, I believe, and you do nothing about it, right? So it's an active faith in this case. Here, moral shame, moral fear has to do with the precepts. Moral shame means we don't break the precept because we say, oh, what people think of me, right? Moral fear is we think about karma. And then, of course, studying the sutta is very important. Knowing the Dharma is important, right? And then, not to be lazy. Here meaning to exert effort. For example, like coming for this class, you need some effort, you know. You got to plan things, you got to wash yourself, you got to dress yourself, you got to get transport, and for me, I got to prepare the lesson, okay? I got to study this text myself before I teach you. I have to translate them too. In fact, there's a lot of deal, as we say. So we can't be lazy, in other words. I mean, you just need to imagine, picture the Buddha, you know, how much effort he puts in, okay? All right, then this false person is confused. In other words, it doesn't follow carefully, listen carefully, or kind of know what is Dharma, what is not the Dharma. And then finally, he lacks wisdom, okay? Okay, so volume 45, over there. Right, next one. The second quality of a false person. And how bhikshus is false person devoted to a false person? Here bhikshus as regard those recluses and Brahmins who lack faith, have no moral shame, have no moral fear, have heard or learned little, are lazy, confused, lacking wisdom. To them, he is a friend, a companion. So in other words, bird of a feather flock together. So they tend to gather together. Even in the Buddhist time, we find you have groups of monks who are again and again breaking the rules, and the rules who are good. There's one sutta where the groups of monks are walking about, then the Buddha tells Ananda, I think, says, see, look at that group, okay, this Devadatta's group, and all those monks with him, they think like him, and then there's Sariputta's group, all this, the monks following him are steeped in wisdom, and those following Moggallana, the great psychic powers, and so on. Okay, so those are birds of a feather, right? So this is point 2. Point 3, section 7. And how bhikshus does a false person think as a false person? Here bhikshus, a false person thinks to his own detriment, thinks to the detriment of others, and thinks to the detriment of both. So whatever he does is going to hurt himself, hurt others, and hurt everyone else in general in due time if it goes on. So his thinking is not helpful, not wholesome, destructive. So you can imagine in the world today what's going on, all those mass shooting and mass killing, violence, even in politics, you find people get hurt. And then next one, section 8, the fourth quality of a neutral, of a negative person, of a false person. And how bhikshus does a false person counsel a false person? Counsel means give advice in this case. Here bhikshus, a false person counsels to his own detriment, counsels to the detriment of others, and counsels to the detriment of both. So when you ask for advice, you're going to get into a lot of trouble. So it's best to avoid asking for advice on this kind of person. Next, about how does he speak? How does he speak to a false person? The Buddha says here, bhikshus, a false person speaks falsehood and utters slander, uses harsh speech, chatters frivolously. Okay, these are the 4 wrong speeches, right? Falsehood, slander, talking bad about others, so that they break up as friends, using harsh speech, and chatters frivolously. And then section 10, that is quality number 6. And how bhikshus does a false person act as a false person? Here bhikshus, a false person destroys life, takes the not given, commit sexual misconduct. In this way, bhikshus, a false person, acts as a false person. Right, so here, in other words, the first three precepts. Here, we begin to see how the practical aspect of Buddhism begin to fit in. Precept 1, 2, 3, our action. Then precept number 4 is expanded into the 4 wrong kinds of speeches here. Right? Now, then it comes a bit more technical quality here. 11, quality number 7. And how bhikshus does a false person hold the views of a false person? Here, bhikshus, a false person holds such a view as these. There is nothing given, nothing offered, nothing sacrificed. So this person doesn't have any belief in charity and giving. So don't give, there's no point, there's nothing good about it. There is no fruit or result of good or bad actions. Doesn't believe in karma. There is no this world, no the next world. In other words, this is the only life. It doesn't believe in future worlds, future life. It is a materialistic view anyway. There is no father, no mother. Okay, here, sounds very serious, you know. In other words, this person is saying, well, we're just humans, you know, and we are biologically born, so what, you know, I mean, I don't care about my parents, that kind of idea. And you find this is very common in society nowadays as humans become more so-called civilized, meaning they live in groups and, you know, because of specialization of jobs and economy and so on, we become more independent, we become more self-reliant, we can use money to get whatever we want, and we feel as if we don't need to communicate with anyone else. You will notice this if you live in a very urbanized, crowded area. You find people are not really very friendly to each other unless they're in trouble. This is where suffering can be a really good teacher. When there is suffering, people start talking to each other, so to speak. You know, like right now, our unit, our block is going through this renovation, and our houses are practically taken over by the construction workers. Everything is blocked up, you know, so we are kind of crawling somewhere to sleep and so on, and our toilets are all being done. We have got to go downstairs to the common toilet to wash. This is where it's as if our houses are open to all. So we get neighbors who never smile at us, and we dare not smile back to them because they look so fierce. They come to the house and they walk right in and they will look. In a sense, I felt that's good. At least he shows a connection. You know? He's more concerned about his house actually. He said, "Oh, this house is going to be like," you know. And we talk. See? And then there are other neighbors who are more friendly, and you begin to communicate more when you have this kind of situation. You know? So this human connection is very important. And many of these people, they're not close to anyone, not even to parents. So this is what's called atomizing quality that happens in this kind of society, which is a cause of unhappiness and crimes. So this is not just a frivolous statement, it's a serious statement about family relationship. You know? There are no spontaneously born beings. Right, here, of course, technically this refers to the non-returners. Some say this can refer to higher beings like the devas, right? In other words, higher beings. It's possible to be reborn, to become non-returner, to be reborn. So these are some of the meanings here. The last one is a general statement. The wrong belief that there are no recluses or Brahmins who, living rightly and practicing rightly, having directly known and realized for themselves this world and the hereafter, proclaim them. In simple language, this means there is nothing good in religion, especially in the Buddha Dharma. There's nothing you can learn from it. You know, people are either good or bad. No point teaching them anything, right? That's a wrong view. the Buddha reminds us, says, it is because it is possible for us to be good. That is why he teaches the Dharma. There is suffering in the world. You can get out of suffering. That is why he's teaching the Dharma. So these are wrong views that the false person holds. The next quality, the last one, right, section 12. And how bhikshus as a person give gifts as a false person. Here, bhikshus a false person gives gifts without respectful care. Right? There's no respect when gives. What does this mean? The person kind of doesn't himself, is not present, doesn't serve the monks or give to the person in that sense. Because to be present is the greatest respect you can show the recipient. Give gives not with his own hands, right? So this is clearly stated in number 2. Gives thoughtlessly, unmindfully, in other words. So you got to be present of mind, right? And you got to be happy while preparing, during and after giving. And then he gives what is to be discarded, okay? So in other words, things thrown away. So this is not respecting others. This doesn't mean we should always buy new things to be given. Of course, that's good if you can afford it. But the point here is something we give that helpful to the recipient, in other words. Then he gives with the view that nothing will come of it, right? So some people think, oh, I just give, there is no benefit here, right? So they don't have any faith in the goodness of giving. Even in psychology, we know when you give someone something, there's a sense of warmth inside you, a sense of space, you feel happy. That alone is a good feeling. You notice how sometimes we feel a little bad if someone turns down something we want to offer, because we feel good when we're able to give someone. But some culture, especially Chinese culture, they have this wrong idea that when you give something, it's like you have control over the other person. We don't have that kind of idea in Buddhism. When you give something, you are appreciating the other person. And the other person gives back because he feels happy too. So these are the qualities of a false person who gives as a false person, right? So these are the 8 qualities, the negative side. Now we come to the happy, positive side, right? Who is the true individual? Section 14 onwards. Again, the Buddha starts with a question. He says, now, bhikshus, would a true individual know another true individual? Would a good person know another good person? And this time the monks or those present answer says, yes, Bhante. Yes, Bhante. Then the Buddha said, good bhikshus, yes, it is possible for a true individual to know another true individual. So notice in the earlier case that the negative, the false individual does not even know another false individual because he doesn't know himself. Whereas in the case of the true individual, he knows another true individual. So to cut the story short, the true individual, the good person, also knows who a bad person is. And of course, he would avoid him. And then the Buddha comes to the closing teaching of the sutta. Who is a true individual? The qualities of a true individual. Again, there are 8 such qualities. Okay? Right, so we'll be on page 44, section 15. The Buddha says, a true individual bhikshus is endowed with a true or good nature. He is devoted to true individuals. He thinks as a true individual. He counsels as a true individual. He speaks as a true individual. Acts as a true individual. Holds views of a true individual. gives as a true individual. So this is just the opposite, the positive opposite of the previous kind of person. And then the Buddha explains in some detail these 8 points, defining the true individual. Section 16 is the first quality, and how bhikshus is a true individual endowed with a true good nature. Here, a true individual is faithful, right? Faith means you have the sense of joy in the Dharma. You feel happy when you listen to the Dharma. You know, I'm amazed at some of the people who come to class. I'm conducting different classes in different places. You find they are there, they feel happy just being there. And when you look at them, when you teach Dharma, you also feel happy because they feel happy. So, in a sense, the Sutta class, Dhamma class is an occasion for being happy, in other words, because we have faith. We have faith in what? We have faith that by getting together to listen to this Dhamma, some of these things I've been hearing again and again many times, is that we are sitting together peacefully, not doing nothing, but keeping the precepts. Right? That's how when we start the class, we recite the 5 precepts. So even if we are, for any reason, not able to pay full attention to the class, we are still keeping the precepts, in other words. Okay? But if you are able to direct your attention clearly, then wisdom will arise. That's the nature of a wise person. So all these kind of grow progressively. Then number 2, this true person has moral shame. It pairs up with the next one, has moral fear. Right? So whenever he's challenged with a situation, he will not get into trouble. Okay? You notice sometimes in the papers you find some of these really big shots, getting into trouble, some scandals, and they just fall like that. Yeah. So because of that one moment of lapse, one moment of carelessness, destroys all their reputation. Right? So moral shame here is where we say, oh, I should not commit this crime, I should not do this, even the small misgiving. What will people say? What would my juniors say? What would my students say? If not, then what do I think about it? The karma, people may not know, but I know, and the karma will come back to me. So that's moral fear. So it's a good kind of fear. Now notice here, this is interesting. In Chinese culture, we have the idea of faith. Okay? Now faith actually is a part of moral shame, but it stops there. See? Whereas in Buddhism, we go on to self-respect also. Number 4, quality 4 in section 1 is we try to be widely learned. As Buddhists, the suttas are our texts of wisdom, so we try our best to understand them. There are many other good books available today, but when you read all those kinds of books, what you are getting at best is the wisdom of the writer. Right? So, of course, you may get some new ideas. I do read some of these books, and what I find is that certain ideas, certain pattern of words, I say, wow, okay, this is interesting. And then it's like finger pointing to something else I can look up in the suttas, and that makes it really interesting. So in that sense, those books are helpful, even without the author knowing it. Many of my reflections come that way. I read some books, and the person makes a very simple statement, but the idea can be used to grow certain better ideas. So this is where, in a sense, we are interconnected in terms of loving the Dharma. So being widely learned is a very helpful thing. Next, the true individual is, with his good nature, in other words, is one who exerts effort. He practices. Here, practice in the broad sense of the word. He is industrious in a physical way. Like, for example, in the case of the monk, he will make his bed when he gets up, cleans his kuti, and you find the area where he goes, wherever he goes is very neat and clean, even in the forest, The Boy Scouts are not the first people to tell you when you leave the camp, leave behind nothing but memories, and nobody will know you are there. Okay? In other words, give back the forest to the forest. And the forest monks are also like that. When they live in the forest, they make sure that nothing is destroyed. Okay? Then, here meaning they put in effort to make it look natural again. Then number 2, of course, is keeping the precepts. You need effort. Mental training, you need effort. The whole idea of being a Buddhist, being a Buddhist monastic, you got to put in effort. Of course, there are the bad monks are lazy. They use the robes because they hope, people respect the robes. So if I go around, smile at people, be gentle and talk sweetly, and be unctuous in my word. Unctuous means oily. It means you talk very nicely, and people love you. They say, "Oh, this monk is very nice," and then they support you, and then you get this rich patron. Then you can go to your university and then find a job in a university, and there you are, you're a career monk. Okay, and next life, good luck to you with somebody's pet, or worse than that, be born in a suffering state, as the Sutta say. So that's a totally foolish way of foolish path to take. So effort means you work, you exert energy on the path to be closer to Nirvana. And then one has mindfulness established. Here means practice meditation and keeping oneself mindful. This is the second training, training in mental cultivation. And the last one simply says is wise. So the monk has to know the suttas and how to apply the suttas, because lay people like us are going to go to them, ask them questions, and then they have to help. So this is, if the true individual has all this, then he is said to have a good nature, true nature. Okay? Right, then quality number 2. Can you imagine, one quality is expanded in so many ways, right? Then the second quality is section 17. The Buddha says, and how bhikshus is the true individual devoted to a true individual? Here bhikshus as regards those individuals and Brahmins who are faithful, have moral shame, have moral fear, widely learned, exerts effort, mindful, wise. To them, he is a friend, a companion. So you find he looks for, in other words, he is a friend to someone similar like him. So where do we fit in here? So if we want to be a true individual, we have to look for people who love the Dhamma, who are able to teach us, or who are keen to learn. This is wonderful. I'm always happy if a new person comes to our center or comes to class, and I look at the sutta book and say, oh, this is what I've been looking for. Or sometimes they just say something simple like, oh, sutta. The moment you hear that, say, oh, okay, this is wonderful. They're just happy. You just say, oh, sutta. It's like they've been looking for it. So that's why we cannot assume that you have a pile of suttas at home. You say, oh, everyone else in the world knows it. I shouldn't be troubling them. You don't know, right? So whenever you can, you just give it to them. I received this message from someone's son, from Facebook. He says, dear brother Piya, I am so-and-so's son. My father got your 2 books, on the life of the Buddha and the Buddha's teaching. Oh, I wrote that I don't know, 40 years ago, when I was in Thailand, my first 2 books in Thailand. They were meant to be English books for the monks, actually. And of course, people donated for the books, and then they were given freely. The Thais love it. And then John Blofield from UNESCO came to me and said, hey, I need some copies of your books. I'm sending to Mongolia. At that time, I think Mongolia was still communist. He says, there's communists there, but they still kind of quietly accept Buddhism. So this is a good way for them to learn English. So these books kind of went all over the place. But the fun part is I've lost my own copy. I don't have any more copy. So I hope they can. I only have left with the Buddha left. That they will, maybe scan it and put it online. So what was good is this person said, my father gave me these 2 books when I was a young kid. I love killing ants. I was having fun killing ants. Then my father showed me the book about not killing, which is in the Dharma book. I said, you see, you don't kill. Here's the teaching, And that had a profound effect on him. And he felt very good about it and took the trouble to thank me. And I said, wow, okay. Don't thank me, thank the Buddha, So this is where you rejoice in the fact that someone has lived good and happily in the Dharma. There's nothing about belief here. It's not my belief is right, your belief is wrong. No, it is about being happy. Okay? Right, so next one. 18, that's the third quality. Here, the true individual thinks as a true individual. How does he do that? Here, Bhikshus, a true individual does not think in a way that will harm himself, harm others, and harm society as a whole. Right? So his thinking is more like very caring kind of thinking. And then next one, 19, that's quality 4, counseling and giving advice to others. So the same. Whenever advise others, very careful. He doesn't harm himself, harm others, or harm society as a whole. Counseling, of course, is a really serious matter. We don't simply counsel people without knowing what to do. And this is something you need to be properly trained. You must have good listening qualities. And normally in counseling, we don't give advice unless you know the Dharma and you know the situation very well. Because if you give the wrong advice, it can cause a lot of problems. You also, when you counsel, you're also karmically responsible for what you say for this person too. So it's a shared karma in a sense. So the wise, true individual will be very careful when it counsels or advises another. Number 20, section 20, which is the 5th quality. How does this true individual speak? Here Bhikshus, a true individual refrains from speaking falsehood, refrains from slander, refrains from harsh speech, refrains from frivolous chatter. Right? So he avoids the forum speeches. This is quite clear, right? It is very clear, but it needs constant reminding. Okay, so this again is being reminded here. Sometimes the suttas, there's nothing new to learn. We totally forget the teachings. So when here again we say, oops, I totally forget this, So we're being reminded. That's called sati also, by the way. Yeah? And then next quality, bracket 6. How does the true individual act as a true individual? Here, Bhikshus, the true individual refrains from destroying life, refrains from taking the not given, restrains from sexual misconduct. So, it is the first 3 precepts. It's naturally nothing new to talk about here. You've got to practice these 3 precepts. Respect life, respect people's property, and respect the person of others, basically. Okay, number 7 is a bit more profound. What about the views? What kind of views does he hold? Here, Bhikshus, the true individual holds such views as these. There is the given, what is offered, what is sacrificed. There is such a thing as gifts, right? For example, in Asia, we are very cultured in this quality. For example, if we visit someone's home, we normally bring some, in Malay we say buah tangan, something like buah tangan, fruit of the hand. It's just a saying, it means a gift, okay? To show our appreciation of that person. Of course, the host will always say, no, we don't really need it. So it's not something you expect people to do. At the same time, it's something we feel very good about if it is done. And this is not just an Asian culture. You find even in the West, when you are invited for dinner, you bring something for the family. Right? So the idea of giving is a universal teaching. So some of the Buddhist teachings are actually universal teachings. And then next one, that there is fruit or result of good and bad actions. Right? So there is karma. Right? Maybe not the action may not occur immediately, but it will somehow come back to us. There is this world and there's the next world. Right? If things don't happen, if the karma don't happen in this life, it will happen in the next life. So you can't really run away from it. There is mother, there is father. This is a kind of affirmation that the family, right? We look up to someone else as giving us life, making us human. That's what being parents are about. Because if we do not have this kind of lineage, so to speak, then we're not human. Yeah. So in other words, it's the genes passed on to the parents that make us human in that sense. So here's a reminder. And also the parenthood is a supports the family. The family supports us growing up healthily as a social being, as a good person. That's the ideal family according to Buddhist teachings. So this is the meaning of there is father, there is mother. There are spontaneously born beings. So in other words, you can rise above yourself if you practice the Dharma. You can become streaminess and non-returners, or at least being reborn in the heavenly worlds and enjoy happiness. The last one is important. It says that there are recluses or Brahmins who, living rightly and practicing rightly, having directly known and realized for themselves the world and the hereafter, proclaim them. In other words, religion does teach good if you carefully look into it. It's just that people mess up religion, they politicize it, but that doesn't mean religion, there is no such good, there is no good religion. There is this goodness, and this is what we have to tease out from religion, the goodness. I mean, in Singapore, we have people from different religions, and some cultures, they dress, the way they look, they follow a certain religion. And you find we freely travel in the same coach, the same bus, same train. And we often give up seats to one another. Only yesterday, we were in this crowded bus, and this young Muslim couple, both of them got up and gave us their seats. They don't have to, I'm quite surprised that they do that. So it's not a matter of religion, and yet it is, in a sense, a matter of religion, because we would say, wow, obviously they have been trained in this kind of kindness, So this is something you must not forget. In other words, the basic things are very important here. So there is goodness in human beings, there is the potential for goodness. That is why the Buddha came into the world, to tell us you can change for the better. Otherwise, there's no point for the Buddha coming to this world. People can't change. We can change. That's why the Buddhas come. We can change for the better. And the last quality, and how bhikshus does a true individual give gifts as a true individual? He gives gifts with respectful care, respectfully. In other words, you don't look down on the person that you give. Sometimes we can forget this in a Buddhist culture. We feel as if we only give to the poor. And when someone poor gives something to us, we feel, wow, we can't accept it, because you're so poor, how can you give me? That's our idea. But the poor can give in other ways, right? And we should be happy to receive from the poor too if they give us something. Then next one is they give gifts with their own hands. Of course, in Asia we use both hands. It's kind of a food giving, so to speak, to kind of feel a connection with the recipient, especially giving to monastics. When giving to monastics, the idea is that the monastic doesn't actually have to accept it, but he's there to remind us to practice this generosity, that to be able to give, you're also giving life, so to speak, to this monastic. And if it's a good monastic, then it is also dharma, which helps to better many more people. We give gifts thoughtfully. Thoughtful, that means in a wise way, in a happy way. The three purities, remember, that means being joyful in the preparation, joyful when giving, and joyful after that. And then not giving something that is discarded, in other words, not something you throw away and then you give to that person. In other words, that is something useless. I give gifts with the view that something good will come out of it. Something good, meaning when you give to, say, a monk, you are reminding the monk that he's a monk or a nun and so on. And that he should be a good monk or a good nun. And you feel privileged to be able to give. That is why in a proper society, a proper Buddhist society, you find if the monks or nuns feel that the lay people are not properly behaving themselves, that the monks or nun can turn his bowl upside down and just refuse to accept gifts from a lay person as a kind of a gesture of kind of protest that things are not right, that a lay person must think about his wrong actions. So there you are, you see, this is how the true individual gives gifts as a true individual. So there you are, all the 8 points. Now there's something I missed out earlier on. If you just go back a bit, look at the end of section 13. Section 13, the last line asks, and what bhikshus is the destiny of false persons? It is hell or the animal womb. Now today we are very afraid of saying all these things because one reason we can't prove this and people might not be happy hearing this. Well, we can revert this as people will fall into the state that they habitually are. For example, a foolish person will be violent, right? So if you are violent, you get caught up in this violent life. That is a hellish state. And then the animal world is rife with ignorance. So if you are ignorant, then you get cheated by others, you fall sick, you get into all kinds of unnecessary suffering, right? So hell and animal worlds are shorthand for suffering of a violent nature, unnecessary suffering. And in the case of the true individual, what is his destiny? It's 24.2. It is divine greatness or human greatness, right? So in other words, joy in the human world or joy in the heavenly world in a different kind of higher level, so to speak. So there you are. You have the sutta on the false person and the true individual. Our task as a Buddhist is to be at least a true individual by practicing the 3 trainings. Alright, so it's just nice the timing. Any questions or feedback?
Yeah, this last sentence. Divine, only in the divine greatness and human greatness. Does it refer to any particular realm?
No, very general. So divine greatness means any of those. Usually, because no meditation is mentioned, So it will be one of the sense world heavens. Dawatingsa, Tusita, usually the sense world heavens, where you go there like for a nice long holiday, okay, enjoying all your good karma. This
one is talking about after death.
Next slide, right?
Yeah, next slide. So next slide. I thought it might refer to some realm or something.
As I said, it's the sense world devas, the lower heavens, where they're still part of the sense world. So whereas human greatness refers to in this present life itself, it can also refer to future lives. So it's a broad kind of good karma.
Piya, I've always asked myself this. So today I found out in this. I just asked myself, is there anything that the Buddha teaches that in this modern world or in my own life I would kind of disagree with? Because Buddha taught 2,500 years ago. And today and to be frank and honest, I've always wanted to ask you this question because you have read and translated so much. I want to ask you, in your course of the last 40, 50 years, has there been any sutta that the Buddha has, which you kind of disagree, because maybe we live in a different world. But today I found that, hey, this is the one that I don't quite agree with the Buddha. He said a false person will not know a true person. If that's the case, Angulimala will never have followed the Buddha. Angulimala, despite his falsehood or falseness and unwise ways, he could see this is greatness.
Okay.
This is wisdom and he followed.
Okay, that's the spirit of the Milinda Panha, The Milinda Panha, questions of King Milinda.
Okay.
So it is attributed to the Greek king. We're not sure whether he actually asked this question, but it's definitely a Greek influence, where the Greek like to ask all these questions. This is called a speculative mind, okay? So we have to know that. Looking for loopholes is called apologetics in the study of religion, Now the case of Angulimala is very interesting. Angulimala, of course, Ahimsaka, he was basically a good person. He began as a very good young man. It's the teacher who kind of confused him. So that's one way of answering the question, that deep inside he's really a good person. So it is the good person inside him that recognized the Buddha. Okay, that's one way of answering. But at that time, his mind is very overwhelmed by all those crimes he's been doing, So it would be impossible for him actually to recognize the Buddha just like that. In fact, he was going to kill the Buddha. So it is not the bad person who recognized the Buddha, not at all. It is when the Buddha changed him. The Buddha said, stop. But he sees the Buddha is moving, he couldn't catch up with the Buddha. Then he says, what's this Buddha saying? He's confused. So that confusion uprooted him from his badness. And then he realized, wow, what have I been? This is terrible. This is not what I am. Then he realizes the Buddha has something to teach him. At that point, he asked the Buddha questions. And only after he has realized the teaching, then he said, okay, I give up my 1,000 crimes. So he spoke as a good person, and then he has already changed. Okay, so there are two answers. One is the good person inside him is there, hidden away. It's just like you see some of the science fiction story, like Jekyll and Hyde. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is the bad guy. Okay, Dr. Jekyll is the good guy. It's something like we say, hey, Dr. Jekyll, fight it. Okay, you're okay. I know you're in there. Something like that. So okay, that's one way of it. The other one is the Buddha changed him, and then he responded. Even here, when we say the Buddha changed him, what's interesting is actually it's like the Buddha is telling him, look, you're good by nature, go back to it, something like that. See? So that's what Buddhas do, they remind you of your natural goodness. So that brings us to another interesting idea, that it is Why are we happy with goodness? Because it's natural to be good. It is unnatural to be bad. That's the way nature is. So nature is good in that sense. So if we go with nature, we're happy. If we go against nature, we're not happy. So that's one way is to explain it. Okay? All right. Oh yeah, talking about that's very interesting. I know some people, they are playing the devil advocates, but they end up becoming the devil. We're very careful, They start saying, oh, I don't believe in this, why, I don't think this is true. And I'm shocked when I read it. I said, wow, they're so sure the Buddha is wrong. I said, how do we know, Right? At best we can say, I wonder why. All my years of studying Buddhism, I think maybe for me, I had a really deprived Buddhist childhood, in many ways. So I never had suttas, and so on. So when I have it, I really treasure it, And I tell myself, I better study everything about it. And there's nothing bad about it, all right? Maybe I'm a person of faith. But my point is, I tell myself, why do these people why are they so speculative? Why must they say, oh, this can't be right, look at all this is logically wrong, Logically, yes. Professionally, yes. But what about one day, a few years later, some scholars prove you wrong? Not the suttas, but scholars prove you wrong. A lot of scholars go through that, Some of them would write terrible things. Oh, the Buddha was a businessman, he's very rich, so he's got all those rich supporters, And then other scholars will prove them wrong, you see. So I thought to myself, why go through all that trouble, it's terrible. In the future, people prove you wrong, Of course, you might say, oh, I'm not around, why should I care? Well, you'll be around, you'll come back, Yeah, of course, maybe you will know you were someone else before that, but that's not the point. The point is, for me, I don't see a good reason that we should say the Buddha is wrong. But where does that put me? So I could ask another kind of question. And this is what true scholars like to ask. Because whenever, for example, when they go to study a culture, they don't say, oh, this culture is stupid, they're doing all these things, But then when they study why this ancient culture do this, they realize there are reasons. All right? Anyway, so I asked myself, if the Buddha said something, there must be, what's the reason behind it? I got to find out. And then there are, you see, right now I'm engaged in writing essay number 1, chapter 1 of volume 52, SD 52.1. There are like 15 titles there. I thought maybe this one, okay, like 20 pages, and the title is The Miraculous Life of Gautama Buddha. Then I realized I can only actually write about his bodhisattvahood from the time he's in Tusita to just before the awakening. That period is full of miracles. And there are lots of stories there. There are like 15 episodes. Then I tell myself, what approach should I use? I say investigative, right? So I tell myself I will present all the miracles as they are and then explain in detail why. And in none of them I say this couldn't be true. Rather I say, number 1, take all these as myths. What does myth represent? Myth means we are not taking historical Buddha here. We are talking about the mind of the ancient Indians who are preparing the Indian audience for the coming of the Buddha. They do not have television, they don't have mass media as we have today. What do we do today? We want to sell something. We highlight the good points, we use colors, we invite some good-looking, clever actors. Hyper, see? So that's the Indian hype. They're called myths. So we have the Bodhisattva being born from the right side of Queen Maya. When he's born, he stands and walks 7 steps. No babies can do that. Why is the story told? It's because he's not a normal human being. He's not going to be a normal human being. He's going to become Buddha, the most evolved human being. That's the message. Because you got to transport yourself to the Buddha's time, the people, the story are being addressed. Of course, for us looking 2,500 years later, we say, wow, I can't believe this, it's all just myth in the bad sense of the word, but myth has a good sense. So I explained it that way, and I've ended up with just the first 5 episodes, there are 15 episodes, first 5 episodes, it's already 50 pages. So I projected, I said, oh dear, this one title, one chapter is going to take the whole book. So, because it's such a, I never realized, when I first saw the title, I said, oh no, another essay. I actually thought of cancelling it. I said, forget it. I'm lazy to write another essay. I'm just going to do this task. It's so easy to translate, But then I say, it's there. If I remove it, there are some cross-references which have to be worked. There's a lot of trouble there. So there you are. There's so much to talk about myths. For example, why the storytellers use it, and what are the background, and you start talking about the country, the culture, the politics, India, what's happening at that time. There's so many interesting things that come together. What I'm saying is, after 50 years of studying and research, they all begin to make sense. All the coming up from the right side, walking 7 steps. He's able to talk with a loud voice, even as an infant. All this can be explained. So there's no need to doubt all these things, because these are symbolic language. The point is very simple. We are willing to watch all those unreal Korean soap operas. We watch Star Trek. We watch all the science fiction movies. We know they're not real. In fact, if they are real, we won't watch them. They're science fiction. We watch and we enjoy it. Because these stories attract us because the possibilities of the human mind. So the Buddha myth shows the possibility also of the human mind. This is the realm of mythology, which is a very important part of our culture. Right? Anyway, do read the book when it's out, as you said. Okay?
I think you get the same thing.
I think the Buddhist myths that you are not studying.
Yeah, when we say myth, we're talking about, you've got to understand who the storytellers are. And why did they tell the story? Because they got no other means of expressing the, what shall we say, in a sense, for example, I used the word the divinity of the Buddha. But I don't mean he's a god, is it? Or maybe I even say trans-divinity of the Buddha, whatever. So these are big words, So we are welcoming, we are announcing the coming of this very special being, in other words. And they're also influenced by many other things. For example, Alexander the Great's coming to India. And because of that, they came up with this idea of a world monarch, the Mahapurisa, and so on. So all these are very interesting. You begin to see all the connections. And that's why I was so involved with the working that I just get lost in it. And there is this drilling going on in the house because of the renovation. Try working with the drilling going around you. I mean, it's right in the house, just in the back toilet. Our neighbor thought he could stay in the house and go to the house. After like 1 hour, he ran away. Just said, I don't think I can stay here. But once I start working, then I hear the noise here, but I just go on working as this is such a beautiful topic. So take it as a story. We love stories. We love stories of Jack and the Beanstalk, Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and so on. Because all these stories tell us a human struggle between good and evil and so on. Right? So that early part of the Buddha's life are stories. And then you begin to discover who invented some of these stories which are not true. For example, we are so used to the idea that there is this king Suddhodana. He was a ruler of a kingdom, Now that is the bad myth. That's not true. He was not a king and he had no kingdom. From the history part, we know that it was a republican system, so the chiefs get elected different times. At best, it was a council. And what's even worse historically is that they were a tributary of Kosala, which is a bigger kingdom. But the king was very respectful of the Buddha. So that was the real deal. So, that is not a myth. It's nothing to do with the myth. It's just that it's our Question now is who invented this story? So we come to another person called Ashwagosha, who was a court poet with King Kanishka in the northwest of India and very Mahayana. And he wanted to improve his standing in the court. So he wrote this Buddha Charita, the life of the Buddha. He wanted to present a complete life in beautiful courtly poetry. And he invented the idea that Suddhodana was a king. And in fact, he went to ridiculous length to show how great a king he is. And it's because of him we started talking of Suddhodana as a king. Actually, Kshatriya means warrior. Okay, of course, Kshatriya also can mean king. This is the problem with, But it just means a warrior class, noble class. But at that time, the Sakyas' power were waning. They were in the outlying areas of north central India. Okay, the central area were the kingdoms, especially Magadha and Kosala. They were fighting each other, and then they got through marriage, it was called state marriage. There was some kind of peace, and then from there later on, the Maurya Empire grew, the biggest Asoka's empire, the biggest Indian empire. So what we're saying is, the Buddhist time also was a time when the empire was building up. The republican system, the tribal system were all slowly weakening away, and the Sakyas are one of them. And if you study very carefully, you find there are 16 great states during that time in the central Gangetic plain, but the Sakyas are not mentioned among the 16. I mean, if they're such a great kingdom, why are they not mentioned? So all this show that actually they're just a tribe. They didn't get into trouble because they didn't fight King Pasenadi, and in a sense, King Pasenadi protected them against other smaller kingdoms. So these are facts we need to know. But now things are clearer to us, so we have a clearer picture. And there was a time during the First World War, around that time, the colonial period, when some of these Western scholars they thought that the Buddha never existed. They say, oh, he's just a solar mist, it's not real. Okay, now scholars will laugh at you if you talk like that, you see, because they know the Buddha is real. Right? So we've got to see the myths as, even now, I'm sure sooner or later people will start talking about, say, our first Prime Minister, LKY, in mythical terms, right? I mean, don't be surprised, because he's such a great hero to us. All heroes have myths, right? Even the great teacher, they'll tell great stories, things which the teacher's never done will be multiplied, become bigger, magnified, right? So that's myth. Okay? So we don't have to take it as true. We just say, okay, you're talking about the teacher, okay, important thing is follow the teaching, those are just hype, and take it like that. So we don't have to take it seriously. In fact, once you meditate, you let go of all that. It doesn't really matter anyway. So this is a special thing about Buddhism. No need to trouble yourself about it. It's a nice story to talk about. Okay, yes, any other questions? Last 4 minutes. Meantime, I'd like to officially thank William for this new microphone, so we can record this talk more clearly for people to hear. Okay, no more questions, Alright, so let's end here. Right, so just a reminder, next lesson will be the last for the year, because the end of the year being KL, tomorrow is a holiday here. So do not miss the class, please, right? We still are just starting with this volume 45. Alright, let us close with a short reflection. The year is fast coming to an end, and you can see it as you have been coming here, how many volumes you have studied, and there's so many interesting things. And we can always remember everything, so occasionally it's good to just look back in those books or listen to the talks and just let it come back, and then you find what you have known before actually takes on a new life when you look at it again in the years to come, when your mind is wiser and you're more mature. And that's the way the Dharma works. There is first the listening, and then there is the storing, and then there is the recalling, and then there is the revising, and then you find there is the internalizing. You begin to see this teaching is really a part of you, making you truly happy. And then finally comes the freedom, awakening. Reflecting in this way is wonderful good karma. By the power of such karma and the goodness of the three jewels, let us send our loving kindness first to ourselves, that we may be well and happy and healthy to practice the Buddha's teaching and attain at least stream winning in this life itself. And by the power of the three jewels and our own good practice, let us send our loving kindness to all our loved ones, those who have supported us, and those who are practicing the Dharma, that they may be well and happy. And may all the people here, all the beings here, to be well and happy. May all those who have come here, may they find true happiness. And finally, those who have problems and who are lost and seeking the truth, may they find the true teaching in this life itself. May all beings be well and happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.